Hello and welcome. My name is Vladislav Novikov. My guest today is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and local elected official in the state of Wisconsin. Yuri, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Trump had a revelation. Macron says he finally admitted that Putin lied to him about peace. The Times adds, Trump now believes Putin has gone mad. Okay, all right. So what's now? Does this change anything?
I don't know that it does. Let's take apart this situation. It's not a very complicated one because one man called another man crazy. How complicated could this be? But this is an important feature of Trump politics, which is to show fear of Putin. And it is actually an important part of Kremlin narrative, as well as to show that Putin is crazy. Oh, Putin is so crazy. He's uncontrollable. Hold him back. Give him what he wants because, he's mad. He's crazy. So when Donald Trump plays into that, that really is just kind of playing along with the storyline that Kremlin wants. Now, there are two ways to respond to this, at least, that I can think of, which is one is to say, you know what? We're not scared of you, Kremlin, because we're America. We have ways to crush you in ways that you cannot imagine. And so we're going to do what we're going to do, and we're going to help Ukraine, and we're going to demonstrate that we are the superpower, kind of along those lines. Or there's another one where it's a different line of thinking where you say, oh my goodness, he's going to start a war. We have to protect ourselves now. Everybody run, cover. Oh, the evil Putin is on his way. Quickly hide and cover. And that's, unfortunately, this position of projecting weakness is more along the lines of what we're seeing with Donald Trump. Because how did he get to this position? Now, if he would have continued aid to Ukraine like his predecessor, then he would have had more leverage that he could use against Putin to make sure that Putin did what Trump wants. Not just rely on good relations, but actually have some leverage. And sanctions is not enough leverage to get there. So perhaps in order to have really Putin pay attention to Trump, Trump should really just concentrate on helping Ukraine militarily, because that's going to help him get respect from Putin. But instead, we see that Donald Trump first says that he's going to solve the situation war in 24 hours, then in 100 days, then, I don't know, pick a number, and it's going to be different. But that's no surprise with the person that we're discussing here, because his trade wars start on Friday and end before open day of business. They end on Sunday. That's a trade war that we're dealing with. So in this situation, what is he going to solve? He's just going to try to build good relations with Vladimir Putin. That's the one thing that this American president appears to be most interested in, is to have good relations with Russia. And if he wants to have good relations with Russia, what stands in his way? Oh, Ukraine. So Ukraine needs to surrender quickly so that Donald Trump could accept peace on Putin's terms, so that Donald Trump could have good relations with Russia as soon as possible. That is not happening. So Ukraine is really ruining the plan here. And Putin continues with his war as if he doesn't care about, what Trump wants and good relations with Trump, as if it's Putin is almost like trolling or looking down at American president. And in that situation, first American president wanted to be a part of it. He's going to bring everybody together. And then, so he steps away from being just a supporter of Ukraine to being like a mediator. And then he says, well, neither one of these sides seems like they're coming to an agreement, so I'm out of here. Which really only reminds those that are paying attention about how Donald Trump left 6 of his businesses in bankruptcies and cheated on every one of his wives. So I think that the potential there to show strength is very limited. But the fact that Donald Trump is unhappy and is now projecting his weakness all over the place, kind of displaying his inability to deliver, of course, might work on a personal level when all that he's surrounded by are, whoever he hung out with at Mar-a-Lago or wherever he would go to after he declared another bankruptcy, and people would tell him what he wanted, and then he had a television network that rebuilt his reputation for somebody that he isn't. So this is whole faking situation developing in front of us, kind of like with Putin faking being a big time spy, and then Trump faking that he's a big time businessman when all he knows is how mafia runs. They're both mobsters. And so with that, okay, so now that guy is crazy. Okay, so what are we going to do about it, Mr. Trump? Are we going to do anything about it? Are we going to demonstrate our strength, our ability, our American might, or are we going to bend over and take it from Mr. Putin because, he's great and amazing? I think that evidence, unfortunately, does not look very encouraging.
And building on that, again, Trump says Putin has gone totally crazy. At the same time, he blames Zelensky for causing problems. So who's really the problem for Trump here? And does that mean he'll finally get tougher on Putin?
There's a couple of things that I feel are important to mention here. First of all, that Trump is really acting here as Putin's servant, because he's saying things that Putin wants him to say. Yes, it is not helpful to Putin that Zelensky continues to speak up, because every time Zelensky speaks up, he brings attention to the barbaric war that is Russia and a Russian war against Ukraine, where they are shooting ballistic rockets, Russians are, ballistic rockets at apartment buildings. And when Zelensky talks about it, yeah, it continues to represent that, as Russians say, bone in throat, that Ukraine is for Russian regime and therefore stands in the way of Donald Trump fully embracing Vladimir Putin, Donald Putin. So that's number one that I think is important to acknowledge, that Donald Fredovich Trump is acting here as a servant for and just getting the point of view of Russia across. On the other hand, it is another terrible example of projection, where it is entirely of himself, that it would be like this expression that what Donald Trump said about Zelensky could be easily applied to Donald Trump himself. Because if you look at the fact that every time he opens his mouth, he hurts his country, look at our economy. So I think that it's very clear. Look at our international reputation. Look at the fact that airlines are starting to cut flights to the United States because the demand isn't there. So this is in this setting, when Zelensky is being criticized for speaking out, perhaps it's somebody else who should heed his own lesson.
And Moscow keeps using fake Ukraine hit us first excuses to cover up its war crimes. Is Trump still buying that old trick?
He is, if you consider, I think, the way he looks at the world. And in his worldview, I think he looks at Ukraine kind of like he looks at Gaza. And you know how he looks at Gaza and Palestine? Without respect, okay? And so how does he look at Ukraine? He looks at a bunch of weak situation that somebody who is strong is going to take and look differently at. And so he's going to continue to view Ukraine as something that is really something that the big, more powerful neighbor should be dealing with, kind of like he generally supports Israel's approach to Palestine, to dealing with Palestine and Gaza, which is to bomb the crap out of it. And, if somebody dies in the process and we hear and we see news from Gaza, we just dismiss it because, you know what? Because they attacked first, because October 7th is such a powerful, powerful tragedy that I feel like it almost clouds the minds of people emotionally to the point that they're not able to see, and then they end up justifying things on an emotional basis versus, using some other part of their body. And this is what Russia is trying to simulate with its pathetic attempts at saying that very legitimate very legitimate attacks by Ukrainian armed forces that are trying to take out military installations and in general attacking back and trying to get Russia to stop its war of aggression, that somehow that can be compared to what took place on October 7th, Putin's birthday, no less. Let's not forget, October 7th is Putin's birthday. So who is behind this? Who got a present out of this? So I think Russia's attempts at trying to make itself look like a victim in this situation are pathetic, and they are unjustified, and they are seen for what they are. However, it is an important part of Russian propaganda to continue to pump out crap. And they will continue to do that because Russia understands much better than pretty much any other country, including Israel and the United States and even Ukraine, the importance of financing a message from the state. Because if Russia has point of view that it wants to pump out, it will use billions of dollars, if necessary, to sponsor state propaganda tools that will get that message out in Russian and English and whatever, in Ukrainian, whatever language is necessary. However, when we look at the information, we say, well, this is just a market, and if something happens, then that's capitalism. It's almost like we're considering, TikTok is not today's telephone of 50 years ago. There are a lot of differences. So I think that pretending that we're going to be able to stop Putin, who is investing lots and lots of gobs of money into getting his point of view out. I mean, I just read that they pumped out 3.5 million pages of information promoting Russia just with the purpose in the internet of Russia did last year, I believe, just so that the artificial intelligence models that are sucking up all this information suck up more Russian propaganda, and therefore what ChatGPT or some other AI engine, because there's more than one, are now taking that information into consideration. So once again, we're looking at Russia working very hard to get its message out, and the rest of us are just struggling to combat the constant stream of disinformation.
It seems to me that Trump may be able to ignore Gaza, but not Ukraine. Every day of silence cost him his reputation. So I wonder, is he really comfortable with all the bad headlines about himself in the media?
Well, it depends, because for whose reputation are we concerned here? That his reputation, then compare this to Gaza and Palestine for a second. Reputation, who are the people that are concerned about Gaza and Palestine most? Those are the people that are like the most left wing, essentially, of the Democratic Party. And they're the ones who are upset at Democrats. They're not really even dealing with Republicans. They're more of the left-wing problem. Is Trump concerned about getting their voices and votes? Well, actually, a little bit, yes, because when it comes to time around elections, there was a lot of disinformation where people were, the Arab Americans, popular communities in Michigan and other states were pumped specific advertisements explaining to them that Biden was terrible, but Trump was going to come and get everything fixed. Kind of like Russian, speaking, and people with the connection to Ukraine that live in the United States that voted, that looked at this and said, well, this is, Biden is so horrible, he's not helping Ukraine enough. Surely Trump is going to be better for Ukraine. And so they were led by their own dreams and desires and biases into this direction. So should Trump have respect for people who are so easily purchased and bought their opinions? No, he's not going to care about that. Now, what about the opinion of people that care about Ukraine? Well, who are those people? Interestingly enough, it's a lot of people who also support Gaza and Palestine, and a little bit, well, I would say significantly more bigger chunk of people who support the Democratic Party. So that's a much bigger chunk of population, but still, how many of them are Republicans? Not that many, because the Republicans that support Ukraine do it either quietly or it doesn't seem to get in the way of the way they vote. They still vote for Trump. So remember, we had these Reagan Republicans. Where were they? Did they vote for Kamala Harris? And I just would like to remind everyone that if Kamala Harris was president right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be having a different conversation, but not this one, because there would be 8 packages to Ukraine being announced every week or every 2 weeks, because I'm sure that President Harris wouldn't want to show her, to be Biden being stronger than she was. She'd have to demonstrate strength. So it would have been a real different situation for those that care about Ukraine. That would have really made a difference. But people made a choice. And people that voted and supported Ukraine in America overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris. And guess what? For those that missed, she lost. And so reputation before those people doesn't really concern Donald Trump either, because they're on the other side. He never claimed that he wanted to be president for like all Americans, regardless of who you voted for. I mean, it may have flickered somewhere in a tweet written by somebody else, but it's pretty clear that he is not trying to be president for all Americans. He is interested in people that voted for him in terms of trying to meet their cultural needs, not economically needs, but cultural needs. Let's show those transgenders, oh, we are so strong. So in this setting, to expect Trump to be concerned about his reputation, and he lives in his own bubble. How can anybody get through to his bubble and tell him he's not doing well when after 50 days of his rule and the country being already on fire for 50 days, he's, his staff or whatever publish a document about 50 accomplishments of President Trump. He could have a daily calendar of his accomplishments. He's just winning. It's amazing the world that he lives in. So what if about the fact that he is looking weak in front of Putin? Well, you know what? Putin likes him. And I think that really all that matters. And if Putin is happy with him and that European Union or whatever that's not happy with him, well, listen to his Vice President J.D. Vance. He's clearly unhappy with Europe to begin with already. This is the attitude. We hear this in articles about negotiations right now about tariffs, where Europeans are saying that we're negotiating with Americans like with partners, and they're negotiating with us like with competitors. So you have to understand that this is like with Marco Rubio, when he's being told that he's acting in a way that is really going against everything he said, and Democrats are not happy with him, and they're regretting that they voted for him. Well, he said it makes him happy. So this is not a situation where those people that are going to feel poorly and feel less of Donald Trump for failure to secure Ukraine, for failure to support our ally, for failure to show strength as our country, demonstrate American strength. Those are not the people that Donald Trump is particularly concerned about, because if you are admitting that 2 + 2 is 4, well, then you're not really a Trump supporter to begin with, because their attitude is 2 + 2 equals whatever President Trump said today. So if you're not able to function within that reality, well, then I guess you're on the outs.
Okay, Yuri, so talk about big money. Trump has delayed imposing massive tariffs on EU goods. Can you explain why, or maybe give us your take on this news?
Do you mean his quick surrender in the trade war? That was okay. That was something that he does all the time, and this is how we're going to get to a situation where people are going to pay less and less interest to what he has to say. Because if you see that he says something, the market drops. Then he says something again, the market goes up. In the meantime, he and people around him seem to have all the information about what to buy when. It seems like a really just kind of a setup. So I think one way is it makes the president of the United States eventually kind of irrelevant because he's trying to use his power too much. On the other hand, this certainly does not promote any trust. And I think that's really the key here, is this unpredictability or unpredictability that we're dealing with is crushing America and crushing the world, because we've always been, this is not just Ukrainians, everybody had certain expectations that, America, well, America is going to be America because America. Turns out that America can be different because elections have consequences, and there's different kinds of Americans too. And more of them voted for Donald Trump than for Kamala Harris in this last election. There are consequences, and this destruction of trust in the United States is probably, in my opinion, the main one. Because who is going to want to deal with such an unpredictable, almost banana republic, practically, country? It also highlights how Donald Trump is using trade tools to accomplish goals that he may not be discussing outwardly. For instance, there's a good possibility that the reason he's fighting with Apple so much is not because he expects them to actually start producing iPhones in America, because that seems just ludicrous. It's going to take years. None of them are made in America. But on the other hand, if we can consider a possibility that Apple is not giving the United States government secret information, private information on its users and its customers, but that's the struggle. So we're not actually even seeing the real thing. We're seeing these these supposedly good words being said about, we should produce this in our country, buy American. In reality, you go, this is not populism. This is just demagoguery, because there is no way. But perhaps there's another reason, like, hey, Apple, give us the passcode so we could access information for anybody we want, any journalists, or et cetera, political enemies. It would make Trump's life so much easier if they could connect that information with his Kash Patel's FBI and Department of Justice Attorney General's office. I mean, this could really work out slick for them. And then there's Apple, who seems to be still, as far as we know, standing to protect their rights and privacy of their customers. I wish them luck, and I don't know at what point and how they're planning on fighting this battle long term. But in the meantime, President can attack them for not making phones in the United States. So basically, any such negotiation seems to have kind of, as they say, a second bottom. So there's like a part where Trump says, and then what actually Trump wants or Trump means. And one of those reasons is that some people like to negotiate with mafia, and some people don't like to negotiate with mafia. Trump's approach to, we don't negotiate with terrorists, we just give them everything they want. That really is a turnoff for a lot of people. And it's a turnoff for the problem ultimately is that nobody but America is going to be able to fix this. It's like when people were waiting for United States to come and rescue them during World War II, they were hoping and waiting for this America. Well, we are in this America. We are America. We are Americans. And so what we can do here is what is going to happen with this country. And there is no other America that's going to come and rescue us. And I think that realization, and based with the understanding that we have to start with finding our honor and decency and respect and trust in ourselves, that's going to grow out into respect and trust in our own country. And I think that is going to create a path for us as a society forward, and that's where elections are so crucial. And of course, if just a handful of Republican congressmen would say, you know what is happening right now is really destroying our country, and I feel that my country is more important than my party, and I am less scared of Donald Trump than I'm afraid for my country, and switch party and become Democrats. And immediately we can have Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. We can begin impeachment proceedings. We can start having committee hearings about all the things the Trump administration has already done that need to be investigated, not just for, not for political reasons, but think for constitutional, for law and order reasons, to show people that America works. And of course, that's what Donald Trump stands against. So that's the challenge we have today.
Thanks so much, Yuri. Really appreciate your time and insights. Great having you with us.
My pleasure.